Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are bringing you a first look at a very interesting Tier VIII Premium Battleship. This is Pan-American Tier VIII Premium Battleship Atlântico. As you can see, right in the middle of your screen there, Atlântico is sporting the Brazilian flag, so that is very clearly the nation she is meant to represent here in World of Warships at Tier VIII. When you look at this ship, the first thing that leapt out to me was, my God, this thing looks like a Texas, like Battleship Texas, in terms of not really the superstructure and stuff, but the layout, right? I've got an AB turret, I've got this midships turret, I've got an XY turret at the stern, and I've got kind of a forward superstructure, a bit of an aft superstructure, funnels in the funnels midship. But when you start to look deeper and you start peeling away the layers of the ship, it's very obvious that it is largely based on a British concept, not the least of which is this turret, which is quintessentially British 381mm guns. In fact, these turrets look to me almost like the ones on Vanguard now that I sit here and look at them. But yeah, Atlântico, and of course, look at how many secondaries this ship is covered in, right? You get 4 big old fat caliber secondary turrets on each side of the ship on top of an array of additional 5-inchers. So yeah, this is a really interesting ship, guys. So let's peel away some of the layers and we'll talk about what we've got going on here with Atlântico. First up, survivability, 60,000 hit points, basically straight up flat even 60,000 hit points. This is not worst in tier, but it is perhaps a little below average. Most tier 8 battleships come into the game with more than this, usually in the mid 60s. 63 to 65,000 is a little more typical. So we're not talking about like a huge gap, but she is perhaps about 5% lower on the health pool than some of her contemporaries. So keep that in mind, is that, she has a little bit less health to play with. 31% torpedo protection, though, is decidedly above average. It isn't best in tier. You're in a tier where you're competing with the American South Dakotas, which have nearly 50% torpedo protection. So no, you aren't even coming close to that, or Amagi's 43, right? But 31, I mean, in a tier where the average number is probably in the mid-20s, 31 is a little high. That's nice. That's good to know. Again, you don't want to go out of your way to take torpedoes, but when you do, try to take them on the belt. They'll hurt just a little bit less. Armor layout. This is where we start to go, what is happening here? All right, so let's talk about Atlântico's armor layout. For starters, 32mm bow right up to the forward there, and then this strake starting here, 102mm, graduating back to 152, then back to her belt proper, and we'll talk about the belt all the way in a minute. And then, of course, she's got that that graduated belt, 152 back down to 102, back here down over the steering gear and the rudder pentals. So she's got a very solid belt armor up. The bow strake doesn't come all the way forward. But again, what I like about this and is that if you angle just a hair, right? It doesn't take much. You're going to probably potentially show enough armor to an opposing battleship that they're not going to be able to just pen you. I mean, if you show them bow on, they'll probably find a way through. Certainly here, if they bloody you in the upper nose here by the anchors. But like, if you give them a little bit of angle, they're going to be up against, some angled armor plate that starts to thicken up as it goes back. So if they don't aim just right, you'll be able to generate some ricochets if you're getting in a little close. So keep that in mind. Forward deck armor, still 32. Midship deck armor, however, 51mm. That's going to feel really good. That's going to feel really good going up against all of the Tier 8 heavy cruisers, the Zhaos and, American heavy cruisers, all of those, this is not 32mm, right? When they're dropping HE shells on your deck, they're going to be shattering. They're going to get full pins on the superstructure, perhaps, but the decks, they will not be able to pin your deck. And that's nice. That's really nice. So yeah, again, if you're fighting one of these things and you're firing the HE and you're trying to drop shells on them, aim forward, aim aft, midships, you're going to generate lots and lots of shatters. Belt armor, we kind of skipped over that. Let's talk about that real quick. Her main belt, 356 there, you see right at the waterline, slightly thinner, maybe a couple inches just above. We go from a 12-inch belt to a 14-inch belt, back down to what looks like to be about an 11 and change-ish belt here. So yeah, this is again a bit graduated, but I like it. You've got 14 inches of belt here where you need it. You've got 12 right above that, and then you've got 6 inches through most of this casemate. Now, this is both a blessing and a curse, right? If you've played enough World of Warships, you understand that when you get certain engagement ranges, a heavy cruiser, for example, will swap the AP if you're showing him your flat broadside and just smoke you with full AP penetrations here on your casemate. And Atlântico is going to suffer from that, same as every other battleship that has casemate armor like this. So keep that in mind. That it sounds great. It's going to keep the pesky destroyers right from getting full pens on up through here. But cruiser arm, the right cruisers, especially like American heavies with their solid American piercing, you're going to feel that. Let's peel away a couple of things real quick, and also point out she does have a little bit of this cheek citadel thing going on, okay? I mean, I put the barbettes back so you can see how they stack in here. Okay, so I'm showing you barbettes and citadel. Now, the citadel is quite low on the ship. That's lovely. It is incredibly long. Again, turret to turret, so not wholly unexpected, but still not great. I mean, it's well low in the water, but still that's huge. And then it does have a little bit of this kind of cheek action going on. The difference here against something like, say, Yamato, is that this is completely submerged. Like, you're never going to be able to kind of get shells down here. Maybe if just the right angle, but it's one of those crazy shots that you shouldn't expect. She does have a bit of a gap in here. You can see she's got the outer torpedo bulkhead, and then there is the inner bulkhead that actually forms the citadel. So there's a gap in there. Let me finish can I put the casemate on? Yeah. And she also has a little bit of that turtleback action going on. See it right there? It's a 51 millimeter turtleback, which is nice. That's going to make her feel a little German, I suppose, when she closes with enemies and gets into brawls. It'll make the citadels just that much harder to find, should you even be lucky enough to get to be able to try and pull one. So the armor scheme actually feels really good, like certainly against cruisers. Like, to me, this ship, you look at this ship and you go, with this kind of armor scheme, you are just like meant to slap cruisers silly. And I think that's kind of be the theme of Atlântico, and we'll talk more about that as we get into her main battery. For now, let's look at maneuverability and concealment. And this is where you're going to scratch your head and go, what? Maneuverability, Atlântico, 25 knots, 800 meters on the turning circle, 15 seconds on the rudder shift. This is easily, well, she's not easily the slowest Tier 8 battleship. Okay, she's the second slowest Tier 8 battleship. Kansas, ladies and gentlemen, that American speed demon, USS Kansas over in the tech tree, is actually slower than Atlântico, but nobody else is. Every other Tier 8 battleship is faster than this. In fact, 95% of the battleships that she faces are going to be faster than this. She's not going to be running down anybody. That is not what this ship is going to be good at, right? She's going to be able to receive pushes very well. You put her on a receiving flank and enemy pushing into her. I mean, she'll be able to receive that push and do a lot of damage before somebody finally gets her down. But making a push, no, I don't see it. If you've got a battleship with any kind of speed, you can literally just turn around and kite this thing for days, and it will never catch you. You will be able to dictate that engagement range. So that speed is terrible. Turning circle is fairly average. Fairly average. 800 is probably right down the middle of the road. There's a few better. Most of them are worse. It's maybe, at best, it's above average. But with this speed, the ship is going to feel like a slug when you handle it anyway. And then in 15 seconds on rudder shift, man, with this kind of speed, I wouldn't be excited. But that is on the good side. It's on the good side of the curve, but it certainly isn't amazing. You see there, 14.2 detection on the surface. That's with her spiffy permanent camo. Strip that off. She is 14.7, all clean. Full stealth rig for this ship, 11.5 detection on the surface. Now, that is not best in tier because HMS Monarch still exists over in the British battleship tech tree. However, it is good enough for second place. She does edge out Roma, who retains her 11.7 detection, and we are now a little stealthier than that by the time I finish fitting in concealment module, concealment on the captain. So that's nice. Like, that's good. She's going to need that, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Keep that in mind. This ship does have a little bit of that stealth going for it, but her speed is absolutely going to work against her here. You're going to constantly be wishing for more speed. You know, if you're hoarding speed flags and you end up with one of these, this is the ship to play it on. Trust me. Artillery. We're going to spend quite a bit of time in this section, so buckle in. For starters, Atlântico has five turrets of double-barreled 381 millimeter 42 caliber guns. These are essentially British guns. I mean, you can see there, right? I mean, not only by the style and the look of the turret, but look at that shell, right? That is a totally British naming convention. AP, Mark, 22B, etc., etc., etc. But as you look down that shell thing, I want you to notice something else. AP is all she's got, sweetheart. There ain't nothing else. Atlântico has only the one shell type. She gets AP, and that's it. So for those of you that are constantly, like me, constantly looking at battleships that fire HE going, what are you doing? Know that you will never have to utter those words when driving or fighting against an Atlântico. He has AP, that's all he gets. 28 seconds of reload, 30-second turret traverse, 17.4, yikes, kilometer range. That is, I'm looking down the list, looks like it's tied for worst in tier with Constellation. Yeah, that looks to be about right. Yeah, this is really bad. This is really bad. And she doesn't even get spotter aircraft or anything to make up for it. So this is it. 17.4 is as good a range as you're ever going to get. To kind of make matters worse, you see that 234 meter dispersion on a 17.4 kilometer range. That dispersion ellipse is not very good either. That's going to feel, these guns I think are going to feel a little spray and pray-y, right? Like, for lack of a better way to put it. Yeah, 234 on this is not going to feel amazing. It's just not. In fact, I'm looking down the list here. I'm trying to find someone that's maybe comparable. Ironically, Monarch is probably pretty comparable here. Monarch's range now out to 18 and change, and she's on a 242 ellipse with the same sigma. So she basically has, as near as I can figure, or at least estimate, a similar dispersion pattern to Monarch, okay? And Monarch is not exactly known for its accuracy, let me tell you. So as I mentioned, 1.8 sigma means her patterns will be fairly consistent. 1.8 is the normal sigma for a Tier 8 battleship, so she's not gimped in that way or anything. Something else I want to point out is you can kind of look at her and see she's going to struggle a bit with some of these turret angles, right? I mean, in typical British fashion, if you look at this midship superstructure, you can see very clearly where her forward arcs are going to stop for this midships turret, right? Very obviously, this they're going to, you get probably, what is that, maybe 30, 35 degrees off each side of the forward bow there. Her stern turret angles are probably going to actually be better, certainly for these three turrets on the aft. But yeah, her forward turrets certainly the most forward turret, the A turret, is going to struggle with the after firing over the shoulder shot. So yeah, again, if you've driven a Texas or an Iron Duke in the middle tiers, you've seen this turret arrangement. You know that it's not that uncommon to fight that middle turret. I really feel like you're going to have the same problem here on Atlântico. I'll put the turret angles up here in post production. You can have a look at those. But I don't think there's anything to get really excited about here. It's definitely going to be something that you're going to have to work against. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, you can get all 5 turrets 30 degrees off the bow. That's actually quite solid. And you can get all 5 turrets 149 degrees off the bow. Okay, so yeah, basically, 30 degrees off the bow, 30 degrees off the stern, you can get everything firing. That's actually not as bad as I expected. I was expecting worse, so that's okay. Now, let's talk secondaries. Atlântico has 5 single-barreled 127mm 38 barrels down each side of the ship. These are essentially more or less the same guns you would find on a Benson or a Fletcher-class destroyer. Like a high-tier American destroyer would use this kind of gun as its main battery. This is, of course, before they developed the shields and everything for them to make them enclosed turrets, but it's basically the same gun. 6-second reload, 7.5 kilometer radius there. 5 of those down each side of the ship. That's kind of nice, and I would expect those when we get to her AA to help formulate her outer AA bubble as well. It's interesting now to see, again, what I think of as an American gun design here on a British hull going to a South American country. A lot of naval technology getting sold and passed around here. And then the really strange bit are these guys. Atlântico has 4 double-barreled 234mm gun turrets down each side of the ship. For a ship that's at Tier 8, this almost feels like Tier 3 and 4 battleship sort of thing. I can't really explain this idea, but they're here. They're on a very long reload. You see they're 12.5 seconds, 7.5 kilometers of range, but the shell damage out of those is pretty good. 39 mils of pen, that's really solid, 3,400 shell damage, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, with this secondary suite, let's say, it's very obvious to me that Atlantico is meant to be built as a bit of a brawler, right? Like you're kind of meant to drive this ship into close range and just go. Further reinforcing that is the angles of fire on most of these guns. Let me give you an example. If Game Models 3D is to be believed, and I'll put the graphic up here in post production, you can get nearly all of these turrets. There are 9 turrets on each side, right? The five 5-inchers, and then the four double barrels. What are these? They're not quite 10 inches. They're 9 inches and change. Down, you can get all 9 of these turrets. What is this? Like 18 degrees off the bow? 18 degrees off the bow. And also 20 degrees off the stern. So, I mean, the firing arcs of these are really good. Like, this is the ship's gimmick, right? She fires AP only. She is meant to be a brawler. Her armor scheme supports brawling. You know, like, this is a ship that screams, drive me closer at the enemy and let me smash them with my face and my secondaries. So, yeah, you're going to build an Atlantico as a secondary ship. When you see an Atlantico on the board, expect to see it built as a secondary ship. Expect to see it play as aggressively as it can. But that speed is going to be something you're going to constantly have to work against. She does come with depth charge strikes, which Wargaming tells us, has mentioned recently, is meant to be the way to deal with submarines. We'll see how that plays out when the time comes. And then the AA suite. Now, again, with these American 5-inchers making up her outer bubble, I would expect her to have a decent AA suite. And truthfully, she does have a fairly decent AA suite. It isn't best in tier, and there's too many American battleships in this tier for it to be best in tier. But it is quite good. She goes out to 5.8 kilometers. She puts up five flak puffs at 1,400 damage a pop. And then the continuous damage starts at 95 in the outer ring, bumping up to 336 in the inner ring, the middle ring, excuse me, and 343 in the inner ring on the backs of these lovely 40 millimeters Bofors and all of these lovely 20 millimeter Oerlikons. In Bofors and Oerlikons, we trust because tier 8. So yeah, the DPS is there. Like, carriers that attack the ship will know they've been in a fight. She's not going to prevent attacks. I don't think her AA is quite that strong, but it is strong enough that carriers that come for her will know they've been in a fight. This AA suite, certainly in the middle and the inner rings, is very comparable to what you find on a Tier 8 American battleship. It's that outer ring that lacks, because the American battleships at this tier, North Carolina and Massachusetts, they have at least probably at least 5 of the double-barreled 5-inch 38s down each side of the ship. So they're looking at twice as many barrels for dual purpose on each side of the ship. So accordingly, the outer bubble is about twice this. So that's not really shocking when you think on the face of it. But the AA suite is not terrible. Last but not least, let's have a look over at consumables. There ain't much to talk about here, right? I'm a ship in World of Warships. I get a damage control party, and then I get a standard battleship heal. And that's all I get. In an earlier version of testing, Atlantico had a Hydroacoustic Search that has since been removed. So if you have that in your brain from reading and seeing that later, know that it is no longer with us. That is no longer the case. There have been a couple of changes to this ship during testing. Most notably, if memory serves, she began life with improved bounce angles on the AP, and then apparently that has all been removed. So I'll go double check this real fast while I'm seeing here, but if memory serves, all of that has been kind of stripped away. Let's see. Yep, there's the Hydro. AP shell fuse delay, ricochet angles, and arming threshold were all reduced to standard values. And then the secondary battery, the 5-inch guns have German battleship accuracy, and the 234 millimeter guns have German battle cruiser and USS Georgia accuracy. And they changed the ballistics on the shells, so they were a little less effective against destroyers, which she's really not meant to be. That's not meant to be her bag. She's really meant to take on, bigger stuff, battleships and heavy cruisers and that sort of thing. Anyway, guys, there's our first look at Atlântico, a very curious ship indeed. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.